Well, hey there, good viewers. Welcome back to Shop Talk Tuesday Live. I say welcome back, but if this is your first time here, Shop Talk Tuesday is a time when we get together for kind of like a Q&A and also to let you guys know what I've been doing in the past 2 weeks, because I wasn't here last week. Sorry about that. Nathan McCarr, he he rubbed it in a little earlier tonight with the first comment saying, "Wow, you actually decided to show up tonight." I was helping a friend from church move a giant gun safe into his house, and it was real heavy. He needed some help. So I just wanted to say good evening, everybody, and give me a shout out, guys, from where you're from. Also, if this is your first time here, let me know. If not, how you guys doing tonight? So as always, got a LaCroix, LA Croix in the house. I wanted to give you guys kind of an update on the Yacht table, and we delivered it a couple days ago, and the customer is really happy with it. I'll have a video coming out on this weekend, so you guys can check that out. So Thomas, how you doing? Jeremy, how's it going? Nathan, what's up, man? Rich, how you doing? Kyle Mixon, what's up, brother? Elijah, it says, yo, diggity dog. What's going on, Elijah? And David Powell says, enjoy your videos. Watching this evening here in Auburn, Alabama. What is going on, David? Thomas says, we want to know what it sold for. So Thomas, I appreciate you asking. Now, so total cost of materials was about $2,400, and excuse me, $2,200, and the table was sold for $3,200. So made about $1,000 on it, which was good because had a lot of time in it. Myra, what's up? Or Mira, I'm sorry. Not very good with names. Yes, Rich, that is a deal. Yes, it is. I knew the guy, he was from my church, and he actually told us that he's going to take Aaron and I on a weekend trip to the beach in his yacht coming up soon. So, you know, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Well, guys, I'm going to just dive right into it. If you guys have seen the thumbnail, I've gotten a lot of questions here recently on, you know, what do I use to pop the bubbles? Do I prefer a torch or do I prefer a heat gun? And I wanted to kind of give you my opinion and show you kind of what each one's good at it with pros and cons. That's what I'm trying to say. Try to get the pros and cons of each. So Cinnamon says, your videos take me back to my childhood in the shop with my grandpa. Gives me a chance to kind of relive those memories. Well, that's really awesome. As a matter of fact, my wife's grandfather gave me, when he passed, he gave me a lot of the tools that he used, which is really cool to be able to use the same stuff that he used. Jim says, that table was sick. Can't wait to see the video. Hey, Jim, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, it should be coming up soon. Thomas says, just starting to play with epoxy. Yeah, see, that's kind of what you need to do, is just get some and play around with it, because it's kind of hard to teach if you teach somebody if they have never used it before. It is easy once you get the hang of it, but there is a learning curve. D's Hardwood Creations says, what about solvent? I've seen some use. You're right. I've seen people use some isopropyl alcohol also to pop bubbles. However, it does leave some like indentions. It moves the pearl. If you have pearl in your epoxy, it moves that around, and that's not the look that I was going for. Myra or Mira, do you mind typing and telling me how to pronounce your name? She says, working on epoxy river desk, wish me luck. Well, I'm sorry if I said she or he, I'm not sure. So, I never know. I am wishing you luck. I'm sending you luck right now. It's really fun. Is this your first epoxy river that you've done? Okay, Myra. All right. Thank you. David Powell says, about to build my very first tabletop. Which router bit is best for leveling the top once I've glued the boards together? That's a great question. If you check in my video where I level the top, I linked the bit down in the description, but it's actually a bit for surfacing. It's specifically for surfacing and planing down wood. So if you have a chance, go over there and check it out. I linked it down there, so you guys can get one if you need one. So what I have here is, this is the heat gun that I use. It's a Wagner. I linked it down in the description of this video, so if you guys want to check it out, it's like 23 bucks, 25 bucks. But I like this tool. And then I also have a torch with the crappy head. I took the crappy head and put it on this one for the time being. But yeah, I also linked the torch head down in the description as well. So guys, if any of you have ever had any experience with epoxy, comment and tell me which one you would prefer, that you prefer to use. Your opinion. Do you prefer to use a heat gun or a torch? Well, my favorite is the heat gun, and this is why. If you've seen some of my videos, I always use a heat gun to pop the bubbles, and it's because I can get closer to the epoxy without burning it. And as a matter of fact, you could hold a heat gun on the epoxy for a really long time and not burn the epoxy. And so you can also use a heat gun to move pearls around and move it around and it gives you a little bit more, it's a little bit more forgiving than the torch. I will say though that the torch can reach deeper into the epoxy, obviously because it's hotter, but you have to be careful that if you stay in one spot too long, you can burn the epoxy and mess it up. So Mac Evans says, heat gun. I had bad luck with a torch. Mac, what happened? What did you do with the torch? Rich says, heat gun for me because my low attention span isn't made for torches. That's funny, man. I'm just like you. That's exactly my problem. Jennifer says, torch cause fire. Myra says, heat gun, but mine gave out. I'm sorry. Time to upgrade. Time to get a new heat gun. Nick says, depends on the person. You can see the flame with a torch, but a heat gun is more efficient. Yeah, I agree. I agree the heat gun is more efficient. Well, one, because you can't really run out of heat unless you're like Myra and your heat gun burns up. But, you know, with a torch, you know, it only lasts for so long, and you know, until the propane runs out. So then you're kind of, I've had that happen too, where I started to, luckily I owned my heat gun already, but I was popping some bubbles on that, it might be behind me, I don't know if you can see it. Oh no, it's over here on the shelf. But the serving board that I did with the 2 oak cookies and the green epoxy, I was actually using a torch on that one, and I I did like a corner of the mold, and it went, and I ran out of propane. So luckily I had the heat gun and I was able to pop all the bubbles. Max Evans says, I burned my epoxy a bit. Sorry about that, Mac. Mara says, yeah, it was scary smoke everywhere. That is terrible. I know that probably smelled bad too. Like electrical parts burning. Jeremy says, heat gun because I had a 20% off coupon for Harbor Freight and bought one. Hey man, I've been there too. I love going to Harbor Freight and grabbing stuff. You know what I usually get at Harbor Freight too is I like to get my ratchet straps from there because you get like a pack of 4 for like $10, which is great. I mean, they're not going to hold a whole lot, but they can hold enough to keep your stuff down to the truck. So, a couple of issues that I had with the yacht table I wanted to talk to you guys about. You can't really see it in the video, but because I was running short on time, the customer really needed to have his boat. He was leaving, so I delivered it last Sunday, and he needed to leave Monday morning early to go on a week-long trip, and he had 5 people in the boat, so he needed to have a table to work. I mean, to eat at, and so I could only put one seal coat on the wood. And if you guys have ever watched any of Stone Coat Countertops videos, he recommends 2 to 3 seal coats before you pour your flood coat. And that's usually what I do. And as a matter of fact, I haven't strayed from that, and I haven't had really any problems. However, because I was running short on time, I only did 1 seal coat, and I zoom in on it on the video that I post on Friday so you guys can see, but what happened was in the burl area in one of the islands, it bubbled, and there's a few spots on the outside that got some bubbles, and I just could not for the life of me get them to stay out. Once I got them to pop, they wouldn't stay pot. More bubbles would just keep coming up. And so I'm probably going to have a video here soon to show you guys how to remedy that. If you ever have that happen. So be on the lookout for that. Mac Evans says, I'm starting a huge table this week, building it from beetle kill pine I milled. Mac, that sounds awesome. I like beetle killed pine. It looks really, really cool. Cinnamon says, depends on the project. Heat gun moves my epoxy around too much sometimes on smaller or multicolored projects that I don't want blended too much or overflowing, and a torch can pop the bubbles without those issues. Well, that's a good point. I've never done a small project like that that's not inside of a form. So, except for like cracks here and there, but still I wouldn't run into that issue. So that's a good tip for anybody that's doing some sort of art project or something that doesn't have barriers or edges and they don't want it to flow so much over the edge or mix colors together. So Cinnamon, thanks for that tip. I'll probably use that soon because my Cheapskate challenge will be an art project. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it'll be an art project. It'll be my first art project with epoxy, so I'm really excited for that. If you guys don't know what the Cheapskate challenge is, if you see Nathan McCarr in the comments, tell him thank you for coming up with the name. He's the one that came up with the name Cheapskate Challenge. It's hard to say sometimes. But if you guys are not familiar with the Cheapskate Challenge, it is going to be over on the 19th of this month. So you have until then to send in your entries. And that's not entrees, that's entries. So, Aaron's in there laughing. So you have until the 19th to enter in. And the way to enter is just to send me a picture on Facebook, hashtag Cheapskate Challenge, or send me at Goodview Woodworks on Instagram a picture or a video, hashtag Cheapskate Challenge. That's all you have to do. And Aaron and I will choose 3 that we like the most, and then we'll do a poll on YouTube for the winner. And then the winner will get a hotter than a goose fried and chicken fat t-shirt, Good View Woodworks t-shirt. So yeah, guys, if you're wanting to do the challenge, you have until the 19th at 12 midnight. I don't know if that's AM or PM. Yeah. Hey, Carlos from Brazil. How you doing, Carlos? Sorry, I'm gonna get back to some of these comments here. David Powell says, contemplating epoxy on my tabletop. That's how I got to watching your videos. Do you prefer epoxy versus other finish for maple wood? I'm using wormy maple because it was free. That's awesome. Free is great. Now, I will say it depends. Okay, so my dining room table that I'm sitting at right now, see if I can get you guys a picture of it real quick. You may have seen it in other videos. I have a video, one of my first videos was how to put a bow tie spline in a crack. You can check that out if you want to, but my table's a mess, so don't make fun of me. But I have, my table is maple as well. And sorry if that was kind of blurry, but what I did for our tabletop is I just used some tung oil on it, and that's because Aaron and I, if you guys know, we have been wanting to adopt, and we assumed that we would have children by now. Hasn't worked out so far, but we assumed that it would get beat up and messed up, and it was just easier to be able just to scuff sand the top and put some more oil on it. Also, epoxy works well too. You could do something very similar with epoxy. It was just a little bit more expensive, and at the time I didn't have enough. So hopefully that answers your question. You can use both, and I would say that if just oil, sometimes I just prefer oil because of its ease, and also it's easy to fix if you get the top dinged up or whatever. But epoxy has its advantages too, being that the stone coat countertop stuff is made to go on counters and is a little bit more durable sometimes. Thomas says, if you were buying a planer, which one would you buy? So I have a DeWalt surface planer, and I chose DeWalt just because it's more, commercial, industrial, and I found a good deal on a used one on Facebook, and it has worked great. So Nick, there you go. Sorry, see, Nick says, DeWalt makes a fantastic 12-inch planer, and that's the one that I have. I have the 12-inch planer. Nathan McCarr says 12th of April. No, sorry, 19th. If I said 12th, I apologize. I mean 19th of April. So that, I believe, is a Friday. Let me see here. Yes. So that will be Friday the 19th. So hopefully you guys get something out to me. I'm really excited to see your projects. So Greg Coles Jr., how you doing? I think that's the first time. Is this your first time here, Shop Talk Tuesday? I don't recognize your handle. But he asked, how do you go about flattening out a pretty twisted board? I need the board to be as long as they are now, about 8 feet. I have plenty of thickness in the board, but my planer is a smaller one. So, well, there are many ways to use it. Nathan McCarr says use a router sled, and that's exactly what I was going to suggest. You can, Greg says, nope, second. Okay, well, hey, man, welcome back. But yeah, I would make a router sled. It's much easier to kind kind of prop one side up, kind of even the twist out. So if you put a little bit of the twist mounted up on this side and a little bit on this side, kind of get the board as level as possible, and then run your planer over it, you can actually keep a lot of the thickness instead of using a planer and just kind of chopping at it. Nick Garza says, "What's up, bro?" What's up, Nick? How you doing? Hey guys, thanks for. I see I have 7 likes on this video. I want to thank you guys for hitting the like button. That's really nice. You know, the more likes that I get, obviously the more traffic I get, and the more ability I have to keep doing this every Tuesday and posting up a DIY video on the weekend. So once again, guys, thank you so much for your support. I really, really appreciate it. Thomas says, "What's the next project?" So Thomas, I have a couple things lined up, a few of which are the Cheapskate challenge. I have an entry for that. I'm not really entering. I just wanted to show you guys what I decided to come up with, give you guys some ideas. And then there will be a collaboration video coming up soon for another YouTuber. I'm not going to give it away yet. He's a Christian guy, and he does some apologetics. If you guys don't know what that is, you could look it up. But he does some pretty cool videos, and I noticed on one of his videos, he said he makes some pretty dope sandwiches. So I'm gonna make him, I think it'll be for his wife, a cutting board for his dope sandwiches. And as you know, I'm saying it correctly, sandwiches. That's how that's said perfectly. So Mac says, "I sent you a short video of some pine I milled on Facebook." Mac, yes, I did get that. If I didn't reply, I'm real sorry. I meant to, but yeah, it looked really, really cool. David says, "You recommend a higher horsepower router for using with a sled?" David, that's a great question. To me, it's not the horsepower that I mean, it does matter, but no, I usually go with a router that has a bigger collet size. You don't want to use a 1/4 inch collet when planing because it puts a lot of strain on the bit. So you want to get one with you know, a bigger collet. Above the Deck says, "How long will it take a 2-inch slab of walnut to dry in my heated basement? And what's the downside for using wood not completely dry?" So that's a good question. So usually it takes a year per inch of thickness to dry in a heated basement. Well, technically to air dry outside. I'm sure it depends on how warm your basement is, but it would take a lot shorter than that, I'm sure, if it's really warm in there. But what I suggest you doing is buying a moisture meter. They're pretty cheap on Amazon. And you could just check it with that. Really what you're aiming for is something below 12% moisture content. Because what will happen is if you, especially when planing a board that's really wet, by the time you finish planing one side and you try to flip it over, if you don't do the entire board all in one day, which could take hours, you run the risk of the part that you just planed, the moisture escaping quicker out of one side than the other, and it's shrinking, and it bows the wood like that. I've had issues with that with wet wood, and the easiest thing to do is just to let it dry, then plane it, and then you don't want to epoxy over wet wood. Sometimes the moisture can cause issues with the epoxy, and you don't want that to happen because epoxy is expensive. I think one of the other one of my other subscribers commented a few weeks ago and called it liquid gold. That is what it is. Myra says, "So my friend had said I can't use epoxy for food. Is he full of it?" Yes, he is full of it. And the reason I'll tell you why is because epoxy, especially stone coat countertops epoxy, is food safe because it is 100% solids. There's no solvent in there. There's nothing that will harm you. And even if it did have solvent in there, if it's fully cured, the solvent is evaporated, and once again, you have an inert material. So that would be like saying if you ate out of a plastic bowl, you know, will it hurt me? Because when they make plastic, they use weird chemicals and stuff. So, no, I think that he's full of it. You can tell him I said so too. No, don't do it. Also, above the deck, I wanted just to say, if you check out one of my videos that I did a huge live edge table. It's one of the first ones that I used with Stone Coat Countertops Epoxy. If you check that out in my videos, I had a major problem. That thing, it was 3 inches thick. The gentleman I got it for said it was dry, and I did not have a moisture meter. And I would plane one side, and by the time I flipped it over to start planing the other side, it would cup. And I planed it like 3 or 4 times in total. And the third time that I planed it and it still moved, I went and took it. I took it to like an hour and a half from my house where there was a kiln and had them dry it because I got tired of milling this thing. I spent probably 15 to 20 hours planing this thing, and it was terrible. Thomas says, does epoxy make a good cutting board? I would say it makes an okay cutting board, and the reason is because if you cut really hard, it's going to make a scratch. You know, it's going to make marks in it. But it is scratch resistant, so if you're gentle with it, it'll last. And then, as you know, you can always just sand out the scratches and apply more if need be. Myra said, that bastard, I'm going to kick him when I see him. Oh, y'all are hilarious. Oh, man, that was funny. Above the deck asks, can you overheat epoxy when removing bubbles? Yes. Yes, you can. That's why I stay away with the torch. I stay away from using the torch as much. I have used the torch, and the torch can get bubbles that are really deep very quickly. But if you stay too long, you can burn the epoxy. Whereas a heat gun, you can stay on it for quite a while, and it won't get hot enough to burn. But be careful. If you put your hand in it, it's going to burn you. Even with a heat gun. I did that. I had thin rubber gloves on, and I was heating up the epoxy, and I had a paintbrush bristle in the epoxy. I went to touch it. I was like, it was hot. The epoxy was hot. So just be careful and be a little bit smarter than me. Nicholas Sean says, heat gun wins. Yes, I agree. You know, but there's some old school guys out there that have been doing this for a while that prefer the torch. And apparently we learned a good tip for a torch earlier. And if you're doing something with art, a torch gets rid of the bubbles faster without heating it up so quickly. So that was a good tip. I'm definitely going to use that. Thomas said, what would make a good first project? That is a good idea. I mean, good question. I would say, so Thomas, let me ask you this. Are you using it with woodworking, or are you using it for countertops stuff? Because I would say if you're going to do woodworking, what I would do is make like a small serving board or cutting board or something, and that way it doesn't require a lot of epoxy. Like if you want to do a river or something like that, it wouldn't require a lot of epoxy. Um, and that way you can get familiar with it before you spend a lot of money, because what would be terrible would be to waste it, from a small mistake. So that would be my suggestion, is to make like a small serving or cutting board that has a very small river. That way you can try it out. Above this deck says, I torch my pour paintings to make cells from silicone in the paint. Oh, that's really cool. If you're not following me on Instagram or Facebook, please do. And above the deck, if you could send me a picture, I'd like to see some of your stuff. Sounds really, really cool. Greg Cole says, are there some epoxy brands that produce less bubbles? I bought some off Amazon, and no matter how I mixed it, there were tons of air bubbles. Hey, Greg, what brand was the one that you got from Amazon? Nick says a 10-foot farmhouse table with epoxy. Yeah, right. Rich says could do coasters too, small and easy. That's a good idea. Coasters are really good. David says, I don't know what that word is. Epiphanes tongue oil, worth the cost? I don't know. I've never heard of it, and I've never used it. I mean, I have used Minwax's tongue oil. Worked great. And that's what I used on my dining room table, and it's still holding up. Nicholas Shelton says, my first project was making cutting boards. Yeah, see, cutting board would be a great option because you're not using so much material. On the Mac Evans says, on the table I mentioned, it is going to be 6 foot wide by 9 foot long oval. Is that inches or feet? That's a huge table. 6 foot by 9 foot oval. Looking for anything that you can give me for advice on that big of a pour, about 5 gallon. So on this table, is it just an oval tabletop, and then you're gonna be covering that, or is it some sort of cast, like a piece of wood cast in an oval shape? Greg Cole says it was the best-selling one, the one they recommend. Greg, no. See, what I think happens sometimes with these epoxies is if you pour it too thick, the exothermic reaction that happens when you mix the two solids together, or the two liquids together, it causes bubbles because it gets too hot. So the only thing I would say is, according to the manufacturer's specs, you don't want to pour it any thicker than what they say. And then I would just recommend pouring a little bit at a time, getting rid of the bubbles, and then pouring more. So you're not trying to get rid of a lot. I had the same issue. I poured some epoxy I got on Amazon. I poured it too thick, and I also got bubbles. It took a while to get them out. Myra says, what do you recommend for use? To use for fresh flowers. I tried some coasters with real flowers, and they turned out black or dried. Huh. Well, that is a good question. I would say, I don't know. I've never actually coated any flowers. However, I'm sure if you got epoxy that cured quicker than others, maybe like Stone Coat Countertops Quick Coat, if you were to coat it in that, I would say the faster it's able to cure, the less time it has to die or wither or whatever. Max says cast with wood oval shape, big island in the middle. Okay. So, if I were you, I would calculate, instead of doing an oval shape, I would calculate the area using a rectangle with the same width and length dimensions. and kind of get a rough estimate like that, because I found that usually when I do that, I still have just I'm still a little bit shy of the epoxy that I need. So if I were you, I would try to, even the big oval shaped island you have, I would still calculate that as a square or rectangle to give you area, and then I will always get a one kit more than I needed, because I use Stone Coat Countertops epoxy because they also have a good return policy. If you don't use it, you can send it back. So 6 foot by 9 foot. Yeah, it would just have to depend on how much wood you're using in there in the cast. But if you saw my last video with the yacht table, it was 2.5 inches thick, and the river went from 19 inches to about 13 inches on the one end. From 19 it tapered to 13 with 2 islands in the middle, and I still used 12 gallons of epoxy. So it took a lot to fill it up. Myra, so I just want to say I think I'm gonna try to use some flowers. I think that'd be pretty cool. Maybe do something for my wife. Myra says, "Cool, thanks. I'm glad I found you. Now I don't have to rely on a dummy here." Hey, you know what? That person may not be dumb, but I've heard that before. I've heard people say that you can't use it, but I think, back in the day when people thought epoxy, they thought of, like fiberglass resin, which has a lot of chemicals, and that would not be good to use to eat off of. So times have changed. People are thinking green nowadays, and so it's a little different now than it used to be. Hey, Mac, no problem, man. Yeah, Mac. Yeah, I was afraid to do the same thing. I was afraid to short myself. However, the good thing, if I don't know what kind of colors, or if it's going to be clear or whatever you're using for your project. By the way, I would like to see some pictures so you can send them to me on Facebook. But if you're doing clear, I mean, you wouldn't have to worry about it. It would just put your project on delay. If you're doing clear, you could always just pour more on top. As long as you sand, if it's fully cured, you can always sand with like a 320 grit in between. And when you pour, you won't see any sanding marks. They'll go away. And it'll be good adhesion for the next layer. Thomas says, "What's the shelf life of Stone Cold epoxy?" I don't know. It says not mixed up, just bought and not used at all. Okay, so well, it should last. I mean, as long as the two are not combined, it should last for a long time. I have some out in the shop that I've had for almost a year, and I used a little bit the other day, and it worked out fine. Jennifer says, "Dry flowers in silica, they will keep their," I don't know what that word is, "and color." Oh, shape. Sorry, that I wasn't joking. That looked terrible. I'm really sorry. So yeah, they'll keep their shape and color if you put them in silica. Okay, that's a good tip. Thanks, Jennifer. And she also says 1 year for the shelf life of Stone Coat epoxy. Mac, orange metallic. So yeah, Mac, that's a good thing. If you run out, you can always mix more orange epoxy and pour it on top if you don't have enough. And I'm excited to see that. That sounds like a really cool project. Sorry about that, guys. I'm just not finishing my LaCroix. It's delicious. I just want to say thank you guys for coming out tonight. Thanks for watching. Thanks for asking questions. I love it. This is one of my favorite weeks during the favorite nights during the week. I really enjoy talking to you guys and hanging out, and you guys asking questions, and it's really cool to have a community of people that we can just talk and share knowledge, which is really, really great. I want to encourage you guys, if you haven't followed me on Instagram or on Facebook, that you guys go check that out. I'm really trying to push the Facebook page. That way we can all post and all share our knowledge. So if you want to check it out over there. And so thank you guys for hanging out. Thanks for talking. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna get off here now. Hopefully you guys learned something tonight. I learned something tonight, and it was really fun. I'm gonna just answer a couple quick comments before I leave. Max says, "Okay, cool. It's big, and I'm using wood I milled out, and just nervous of a lot of money in epoxy." Yes, I had the same nervous ideas, and I just want to say, what you need to do is just take your time when building your form, and make sure that you overdo the form so that it doesn't leak, because you don't want that stuff leaking out. But guys, I'll see y'all later. Thanks for watching, and do me a favor, if you haven't hit the like button on this video, go ahead and do that, and